Welcome back to Superstat, the podcast where lab medicine meets real talk in 20 minutes or less. I'm your host for today with the most, Stat Stephanie.
And I'm Melody.
And I'm AA Odie.
AAOD in the house. And today we're digging into a silent but growing issue in pathology and laboratory medicine, which is presenteeism, both digital and physical, and why we should stop rewarding exhaustion in our labs.
That's right. Presenteeism is when someone shows up to work even when they're unwell, burnt out, not fully productive. But in the digital age, especially post-COVID world, it's taken on a new form, which has been digital.
Yeah, and this isn't just logging in from home. It's responding to emails at 10 p.m., which we're kind of all guilty of, attending back-to-back Zoom meetings or being on Teams without taking a single break, saying yes because we've got that little bit of time that's left in our schedule because you're technically available.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, many of you have probably heard about absenteeism, which is not showing up, but presenteeism is when employees come to work despite being ill or burnt out or stressed or even distracted, and they're not able, because of those things, to perform at their full capacity, but they still show up anyway. We show up, we clock in, but are we really here? And in labs, it's really draining. It's draining on our productivity. It's draining on our morale. And at a certain point, I think, we'll talk about this in a little bit, I think it actually becomes a patient care and patient safety issue. What is the true cost of showing up to work and not really being present? And so we need digital presence to become a liability and not a sense of loyalty because it's really dangerous.
Yeah, definitely. And I agree with you. In lab medicine, we already have a show up no matter what culture. I feel like, especially post-COVID, it's that essential worker, this whole public surveillance is on our backs, testing is critical to patient care. And I feel like we don't clock out, in those scenarios. We're kind of always on, especially in public health or even when you have like an instrument downtime or critical case rolls through. Yeah, it's really rough.
It is, and you kind of add that digital expectation on now where we're writing reports, we're doing meetings, we're doing audits, emails, and then suddenly person kind of logs in early, skips lunch, answers messages late, appear to be really dedicated, but are you not? You need to be taking that time for yourself to kind of recharge. So you're there, but are you really there? We're all kind of guilty of that multitasking and just constantly doing something, and then we're just kind of exhausted at that point.
Yeah.
So we're breaking down digital and physical presenteeism today on our next episode of Super.
The real trend today in healthcare where overworked is disguised or labeled as commitment.
For sure. Most healthcare workplaces, laboratories, hospitals, clinics, etc., unintentionally we reward burnout. These are patterns like promoting people on your team who are always available instead of honoring people who have set boundaries for themselves, people who have to come in at a specific time and leave, maybe due to childcare or other reasons, but they're not foregoing their PTO. They are, respecting their own personal boundaries and trying to have that work-life balance. This could look like celebrating self-sacrifice for those who are staying late or skipping PTO. Typically in the lab, we reward people who are picking up extra shifts and working doubles. We assume silence is satisfaction when what it could mean is fatigue or fear. In labs, it's often harder to see when people are physically present but not mentally or emotionally present. And in common settings, we are just pushing through because we're short-staffed or because it's that laboratory culture. But a lot of times this can lead to increased turnaround times or being in robot mode or making mistakes or, like I said before, just jeopardizing general patient care.
Absolutely. We see engagement drop, staff engagement drops. I think, we've built this culture, and even I would say, like, as a nation a little bit, this culture that applauds a digital grind. And we kind of overlook quiet excellence. Those people that are always there, that are doing their job well, they're just setting healthy boundaries for themselves. When on the contrast, if we're always grinding, we can actually slow innovation. Just because you're moving doesn't mean you're making progress. You could just be spinning your wheels. And, people ultimately leaving the lab as a result of this is what's really troubling to me, because we already have such a shortage of just resources and people coming into the field. So if we're grinding them out, it doesn't help us.
Okay, so we know this is a problem. So, guys, what can we do about it? And what are some great ways and things that we can champion to kind of better that culture? And I feel like we all are guilty of this, so this is a good conversation to have.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, I am a leader in healthcare. And so the first thing I would say is, as a leader, you have to model this for your employees. Supervisors and leaders need to model what healthy boundaries look like. And sometimes that can be really hard, especially when you have JOMO. That's another phrase that I like to use. It's the opposite of FOMO, which is the fear of missing out. And I think sometimes we have FOMO about meetings, FOMO about taking days off, that something's going to happen, that the lab is going to burn down. And you need to change that into JOMO. Like, you need to model the joy of missing out and modeling people that you can take your enjoyable, earn benefited time off. Or if it's not PTO, even just a regular break during your day. So many times we see leaders eating at their desk or eating in between meals, or kind of touting, I didn't take a lunch break today, I didn't eat breakfast today. And it's not healthy. I think as leaders, like I said, you have to kind of model this behavior, but we're all so guilty of this happening. I have a personal story of this, of when I was actually having my first child. I had to be induced, and I was logged into a virtual meeting while they were starting my IV to induce me. And people just thought it was so brave, and I was so loyal, and I was so committed. But again, we have to normalize you being available to not you adding value. Just because you are present doesn't mean your presence is necessary or your presence is adding value, because some studies show that presenteeism can cost more than absenteeism. Just because you're here doesn't mean you're being productive. It could be that you are burnt out or making mistakes.
I like that you highlighted value, because I do think that even in society, right, the busier you are, it's like the more value you have, right? And that's not necessarily true, and that isn't true, all right? For a person that's valuable because they're a person, right? You bring something unique
Mhm.
from your experiences and your lived in world. And I just think that we misconstrued that. And as leaders, to your point, like, we can perpetuate that myth a little bit if we continually let people take on more and say, like, oh, look at all the things so and so is doing, right? Like, somehow they're more valuable to the laboratory because they've completed all of these tasks, versus someone who may be, just trying to get their feet under them as a new person on the bench, and they're not less valuable because they're in that position. They're
Yeah,
equally
I,
valuable.
I think during COVID was the first time it was like, at least in my mind, socially acceptable not to come to work sick.
Yeah.
Generally, it's like, oh, wow, that person was sick, or they just got in a car accident, or something tragic, unfortunately, just happened, and they still showed up to work. And you kind of reward that by giving them props, or celebrating them, when it obviously should be the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I can think of one of my first jobs. There, people kind of prided, or this one guy prided the fact that he was able to come in and work in the morning, and then realized he was having a really critical health issue, and ended up driving himself from work to the hospital, like actually to admit himself. So he was kind of proud of that, and that's not a culture we want to promote. But I like the joy of missing out and kind of keeping up that there too, because if you're not in that meeting that you're not going to be fully present in, it might give someone else an opportunity to shine at that point, or give them that leadership opportunity that you are kind of holding on to by being there at that meeting. But yeah, I'm guilty of the eating and doing meetings and not stepping away. Even today, I was like, okay, I can do this meeting, and then I can snack on my goldfish, and then go to my next meeting, and then, oh, while I'm doing this, I can do these reports, but need to be better about stepping away, and saying that that best yes, so you're fully present and can show your value.
Yeah, and obviously we do want to highlight individuals who step up during really hard times and sacrifice things, but we want to equally make sure that we are modeling well-being, visibility, and also celebrating those who took rest or showed resilience through healthy productivity. And so we don't just focus on your online status, but we also focus on your outcome. I do remember like one of my leaders um, sitting me down one day and saying, "Look, I'm not reading your Sunday at 9:52 p.m. email. I'll read it on Monday." And I just needed to hear that because I personally thought that showing that I was working on the weekends or that I was still logged in 7 days a week was me showing value and productivity on my part, when really it was the opposite. He wanted me to value my hard earned benefit of time off. So,
Yeah, I think it's different when you're in different levels too. Like what you can ask for bench staff. I feel like it's always like take an extra shift or something like that, and then we celebrate that. Or like what you're talking about in leadership. I think I also want to point out, like on the academic side, there can be this pressure to like write papers and do research on the weekends and like do all of these types of things. And you have to like set some healthy boundaries for yourself, and just know what hill you'll die on. And if that's, hey, I am not going to do work on Saturday mornings because that's my family time. Do you know what I mean? Then you need to spend time doing family time. And the one thing that I've always struggled with, and like my husband and we talk about this all the time, is like when we're having family time, we've got to put the phone away. Like it just needs to be out of sight. Because if it's in sight, then what am I doing? I'm checking an email, right? Like I'm doing it, like we're all doing it. We're checking Teams, like, oh, somebody called me, it pings and you like respond, like, and it's really hard to break yourself of that, but put it down, put it somewhere out of reach so that you can focus.
Yeah. I actually have to put my phone in the other room too. I'm working on getting better at that, because if I hear the phone go off, then my reflex is to respond to it.
Absolutely.
And especially, yeah, Stephanie, we were talking about how your initial boss set you down and said, "I'm not reading that 9:30 on Sunday email." Earlier in my career, I was really worried about, okay, if I don't do this now and get it quickly, the opportunity is not going to come along again. So like the younger professionals might be at the point where they're like, oh, okay, if I don't respond to this now or keep going, that I'm not going to get that chance again. But you will get that chance again, and people do see your value. So make sure you show value to yourself at the same time by setting those boundaries.
Well, what you're saying is like giving people the permission to say no, right?
Yeah.
Like now is not the time, or now is not a good time, and the right time will come, right? Like it's hard to trust that when you're early in your career, or even if you're at a stage where you want to move up in your career. But I tell people all the time that work and life are not separate. They're part. Like work is part of your life. Like it's just part of life. It's an experience we all go through. We've got jobs, and so we can't like forget that life is the priority, though, right? And having a healthy life and being able to live long for the reasons that are going to be beyond this job, right? And for your overall health are most important. And so if you don't have bandwidth, you got to free people up to say no. And you have to let them know it's okay, that they're not going to get in trouble if they say no. I think that's the hard part. I think some people think it's punitive if they say no.
And it's not that you can't do something, it's a capacity thing. You only have the capacity to do so many things, and once you reach that, you're kind of done. Mm-hmm. I do like something that a good friend of ours, that Tawana Wilson, says all the time. She's like, no is a full sentence. Mm-hmm. That kind of resonated with me, that you can say no. Just value what you do.
Yeah, and you don't owe any follow up. Like he said, like she said, and like Aaron just reiterated, no is a complete sentence. And so it doesn't require any explanation. I just cannot. No. I do love that we brought up our frontline employees, our staff on the bench, our phlebotomists, our clerks, our histology friends, because presenteeism isn't just being tired, it impacts all of us. And it's a system where we forget, like we're mentioning, that we're human and that we have capacity. So I just wanted to throw out a couple of quick tips that I mentioned to people that I see are doing too much. You're doing too much. You eating your little sad sandwich at your table, looking at your phone. Your email has all kinds of errors in it because you're typing it fast while you're walking. You're doing too much. So slow down. If you are working in the lab right now, you're working on the bench, try just setting little reminders. If you've ever read the book Atomic Habits, um, talking about habit stacking, drink water in between your tasks, and that will program your body into just taking forced breaks. Try taking deep breaths, deep breathing before you switch benches or go to the tube system to get something out of the tube system. Try just incorporating some deep breathing during your shift. Let's look out for each other. Let's ask your coworker, your friends, text a friend, ask a person on your shift if they're okay, and actually stand around and wait for the real answer. And be a safe place for that person to confide into you if they need to talk. And once your shift is over, leave. There's no more staying after. If you can't, if you truly don't have the capacity to, like I said before, we try to reward people who can stay an extra 2 hours, and especially if you work night shift and you're supposed to get off at 7 and you're staying till 10 or 11 because somebody on day shift is late. Take care of yourself. You're tired, you still have to drive home. All of these things are meant for you to understand that you're not a machine. You're human. The machines are the machines. And so we need to be sure that we're watching for ourselves so that we can protect our clarity, our energy, and care about each other and ourselves.
Yeah, and as leaders, I think we have to self-reflect, right? As people, just know that someone's always watching you, whether or not you're in a leadership position or not. You are a person, you're a leader where you are, right? And in your world and in your will, and you're even in your will space. It's not just a unique work culture thing in the lab, it's a societal issue too, right? So we should do our part to share and highlight stories of rest and resilience and healthy productivity, not just hustle culture. You can be part of the movement toward that, just where you are now.
Yeah. Give yourself some grace. And you guys both touched on the fact that it's okay to ask for help as well.
Mm-hmm.
So be aware that, everyone doesn't do everything on their own. People are always getting help in all different aspects of their life and in the lab. And that's the thing, we're a team. So you have to kind of keep that in mind, that if it's the end of your shift, you can hand off things. You can actually take that moment because you're giving your best for your patient. And you don't want to not give your best. So.
All right. That was a great conversation, guys. I really enjoyed talking to you guys about presenteeism and how it affects us in the laboratory. We're going to sign off for today from Superstat, but you guys like and subscribe and let us know if there's topics you want to hear about moving forward. See you later.